and welcome back. This is episode 2 of our actual play of Fixers from the Floorboards. My name is Robert Turk. I am author and game designer. This is a game that I have created for Kickstarter's Zine Quest, and it's a tiny game about tiny people with huge responsibilities. In the first episode, we set up the setting and the domain and established all of the big folk NPCs, gave them secrets and traits right here on these cards, and I've moved the cards off of the side table in front of me, so they're a little bit easier to work with right now. We that's what we did. So in this episode, we are going to create characters. First in the game, you set up the domain. You do that as a group. And then we're going to create characters. So this isn't the sort of game where you have to come with your character already made. If you already have an idea of what you want to play, that's totally cool. But everybody's playing Korrikan. They're playing 4-inch tall people that live among humankind. We set it in the Rockland Home for Unwanted Children in 1907. They have a nest where the Korrikan clan is on top of the confessional booth in the orphanage chapel, and their scarcity for their clan, something they're always in want of, is sweets. So candy and sweet things. We established a lot of big folk NPC, 5 of them in fact, but we can't just jump into the game. We have to have characters to play. So we're gonna take you through the steps of character creation. And here, let me put up the character sheet. So everybody has a copy of the character sheet, or you don't have to write it down on this fancy looking one that comes in the back of the book, or it's available on our website as a download, both with the border and without the border, if you want to save some ink and not print out all that cool fancy border that I worked so hard. All right, so that's the character sheet. Everybody's got it. And the very first thing we have to do is we have to introduce the people that are making characters today. So we'll start with Brittany up above me. And Brittany, just say hello and where people can find you, wherever that is.
Hello, I am Brittany Purr, and you can find me all over the internet. I am on many social media platforms, and most notably right now, my blog, obscurum.com. That is obscuram.com.
Wonderful. And then over to Mab.
Hi, I'm Mab Just Mab, retired sideshow performer. You can find me doom scrolling all over the internet. Anything Mab Just Mab, MABJUST, MAB. And if you would like to watch more of this glamorous lifestyle, you can always tune in to Nat 21 Adventures on twitch.tv/Nat 21 Adventures, where I get to do live gaming with some of these awesome individuals all over. We do on Tuesday nights. Actually, we have shows pretty much all week. Yeah, see you there.
Great. And last but certainly not least, May.
Hi guys, I'm Mayhemmer. You can find me on the internet as the Mayhemmer almost everywhere. I have been on Nat 21 Adventures with these lovelies. I'm a cosplayer and a costumer, but I have been away because I also am the producer of both the Dragon Con Burlesque show and the Pinup Sweater Pool Party. So you can find me in ATL once a year at the big shenanigans, plus throughout the year for meetings. So look me up.
All right, so wonderful. That's where you can find our awesome players. You can find me at wicked-clever.com, and that's about it. So, yeah. Occasionally on Nat 21 Adventures, but it's been a while. It's been other things happening this year, such as creating this game. So we're going to make characters. Character creation for this game is actually pretty simple. You're going to answer some questions, make some choices. You don't have to roll any dice yet. This game does use 6-sided dice for the mechanic. You'll want a handful of those. It does use a regular deck of playing cards, but you only need one, and that goes in the center of the table. But we're not going to use that in character creation. That comes in when we're actually playing the game. So the first step of creating a character is you have to choose what your calling is. You all are not just run-of-the-mill Korakuen, living your lives, farming, or whatever it is, weaving, whatever it is you do above the confessional booth there. You are the fixers for the clan. It is your job to go out and solve the problems and restore harmony. And we, in our last session, we did come up with the 3 big predicaments that the clan is facing right now. There is a risk of Miss Gray, the headmistress, being found out as a witch. There is a horrible teacher, the etiquette teacher, Miss Ratchet, who really seems to hate kids and is just a miserable person overall. And they just found out that the state inspector is on the way, and the orphanage is in really bad shape because the janitor hates his job and wants to be a professional actor. So, as you are playing as fixers, and your adventure is going to be to go out in the domain among the big folks and fix some of these problems. So you create your character as a doer, as a mind towards that. So the first thing that you want to do, is to choose your calling, and there are 4 callings in fixers. There are the chamberlains. They are the traditional leaders, sheriffs, counselors, and guides. That's what Mab is going to be making. They tend to dress in respectable finery and often sport impressive sideburns or mustaches. So that's the first calling. The second calling is cobblers. These are the gearheads, crafters, and inventors. Nobody is actually going to make a cobbler tonight, but you'll get the idea. The next one is the skeins. These are the weirdo outsiders who study strange and secretive concepts. When I was originally creating this game, they were literally going to be outsiders. They were not going to be player characters. They lived up in the attics, and they were sort of going to be the kooky old wise people that you could go to for answers or when you really need help. And then I thought, well, why not get to play those? Because that's a lot of fun too, to be that kooky, weirdo, smart outsider. And so Brittany's going to play a skein. Brittany, you don't have to be in like old sage. You can be however you want to be. They most often dress in robes adorned with unusual trinkets, and many also wear spectacles and carry at least one book. As you hunt around. Yes, you've got your book. And the last of the 4 callings is the Wilders. That is what May is going to make. Rugged survivalists, nature lovers, and animal aficionados. They may dress like or vaguely resemble the animals they have an affinity with. They are the rough and tumble, outdoorsy sort of fixers. All right. So everybody knows, I gave it away, what your calling is going to be. The callings give you some particular things, and the first thing is they are going to give you a giant key. They're going to give you a bonus to your paths. So paths are the core mechanic. Skill paths are the core mechanic to this game. You can see them there on the character sheet: ponder, skulk, sway, tinker, and tussle. This is whenever you do an action that requires you to test in the game, this is what you're going to look at first, and the number of dots or ranks you have in this are going to be the number of dice that you start out with to roll. So all Korakuen, all fixers, start with 1 in skulk. And you also get another free skill path rank based on your calling. So Chamberlains, who's my Chamberlain? At Mab. Go ahead and bubble in 1 on Sway. We don't have a cobbler. Skeins get 1 extra in Ponder. So go ahead and bubble in or mark in a dot in Ponder. And Wilders get 1 in Tussle. All right, and you're going to get to pick some more points. We'll go over what the things are when we get to that point of picking more points. But the next thing you're going to pick under your calling is you're going to define your starting affinity. So fixers have affinities, and what an affinity is, it's a connection, a unique connection your character has to aspects of the world around them. For Korakuen, these fall into 4 categories: animal, esoteric, object, and room. Each affinity you possess will provide boons and other benefits. So these affinities can actually give you more dice to roll, or they can help prevent damage in certain circumstances. So we will start with our Chamberlain. Chamberlains have to start with a room affinity. So a room in the domain, or it doesn't even have to be in your domain. It could be any human room that you have an affinity with, and you automatically, just for taking and defining a room affinity, you always get a +1 bonus, so 1 extra die to roll when you're sneaking through or navigating a room with which you have an affinity. So it is actually helpful, mechanic-wise, to pick a room that is in the domain, in this case, the orphanage. But it doesn't have to be. If you wanted to be sort of like a shady sort of character, you could totally take pawn shop, even though there's not a pawn shop in the orphanage. So, have you got a room affinity in mind, Matt?
Can I take hallway? Does that count as a room?
That does count as a room. I would probably say let's define that a little bit more and maybe make that the main hallway. Like,
okay, then we could say the foyer.
The foyer, yeah. Yep. So the foyer.
Okay.
That's a solid one. And I'm picturing the foyer here is like that main corridor, because this is an old hospital turned into an orphanage. And it's got like classrooms and offices and things off the side, but it's this wide central corridor with the front door on one end and the chapel at the other end, and then classrooms and dormitories. And just so we're all on the same page, we'll say that this is a 2-story building. It doesn't make sense to have a 1-story building. So it's a 2-story building, and we'll put the dormitories and the bathrooms upstairs, and then the classrooms and things are downstairs. Just so we all have it in our mind. So you've got an affinity with the foyer, and that does allow you
the lobby. I'll say the lobby because it is a hospital, and they're not
right.
called foyers in a hospital. They're called lobbies.
There you go, lobbies. Now that automatically gives you a +1 inherent boon to sneaking through the lobby, but you also need to define a specific boon, and this gives you a boon related to the activities of this given room. So any action that is tied to this room or intrinsically applies to this room, you can take as your boon. So
this is where it gets difficult, isn't it?
This is where it gets difficult. It's not difficult, but where you have to think creatively around the idea of the problem.
Well, I'm just going to start saying things, and you guys pipe up whenever something sounds applicable. So
okay.
The lobby is where you welcome guests. Welcoming guests, sure. Meeting people. Intake forms are usually filled out. It's also connecting to the rest of. It's supposed to connect all the other components of location. So like a networking kind of thing.
Sure.
And
so it sounds like
welcoming.
Yep. I think I like the welcoming idea. I mean, all of that works, but we wanted to distill this down to you get a +1 to, and do we want to say your first interaction with strangers, like your initial? I mean, does that seem
sure.
to fit?
Like translating it from the location to the boon, or however you phrase this, was the hard, difficult part for me.
Right. I probably shouldn't have started with you. I probably should have started with the animal. That one's always easy for people. The room is a little bit more difficult to wrap your brain around, but we've got it. So I would say a +1 to interacting with strangers, or if you want to go with the networking, I mean, we could even say a +1 to networking. You only get to pick one at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The intake form, yes, you could take a +1 to filling out forms. I don't know how useful that's going to be as a fixer. Yeah. So I probably wouldn't go down that avenue. But
I'm going to say networking.
All right, +1 to networking. Absolutely. All right, and we are going to then jump to the animal affinity. Should have started there. But May, as a wilder, you have a connection with a specific species of animal and have gained boons by watching and mimicking that animal. It could also be an insect. It doesn't have to be a mammal. Insects count as animals. Big folk do not count as animals for this, so you can't say I have an affinity with humans. That's, yes, it is a human animal, but that's not the spirit of what we're doing here. So do you have an animal that you are tied to?
I'm gonna go with, only because I'm with the name of Unwanted Children, I'm assuming it's kind of not in the best thing. There may be a few alleys around.
Okay.
I kind of want to go with the cat.
Okay.
I kind of
Going
want
with
to
a
go with the
cat.
cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, for reasons.
All right. So you write down cat under your affinity, and you automatically, when you have an affinity with an animal, you automatically get a +1 to actions involving fighting or taming any animal that you have an affinity with. So you don't have to worry about that. If you got to fight a cat or tame a cat or get a cat to do something you want it to do, you automatically get to roll +1 because of that affinity. However, you also get another boon that you have gained from studying and mimicking and thinking like a cat. So, do you have any ideas on that?
Okay,
That's
so I
right.
choose one boon, right?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be from that list. Those are just examples given in the book. So, for a cat, it could be +1 to seeing in the dark. It could be that you land on your feet, so you take -1 damage from falling. It could be, what else do cats do?
Yes.
They pounce. The climbing.
They play the cello. They
Hunting.
make
The play.
biscuits.
All right, so I'm gonna do the -1 of damage. But what I'm thinking, so the other thing I was thinking was the shadows, because it's kind of like sneaking around, cat like reflex,
Sure.
like whatever. So,
So
I mean, I don't know. So sneaking of some sort.
sure. Well, you only are going to define one at this point.
Oh, I only define. Okay.
You only define one at this point. You are going to get to define more, but we're going to start with just the one tied to your. So if you want to do the -1 damage from falling, that's absolutely that's a great one.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. Done.
And then skeins have an esoteric affinity, which is a nebulous concept. It can be scholarly. It doesn't have to be, though. And you gain knowledge and skill by studying and embracing this esoteric concept. So the one thing, the special that skeins have with their affinities is they can actually do magic. They can do rune magic by tying the runes for their affinities together to sort of create a magical spell. So you don't get an inherent +1 to anything like animals. Working with a cat, you get an automatic +1. If Mab's trying to sneak across the lobby, she gets a +1. You don't get an inherent +1 for that for your esoteric ability, but you do learn the rune that lets you turn it into magic. So, do you have an idea for your first affinity, an esoteric one?
Yes. Paradox.
Paradox. All right. I love it. And what is the boon that Paradox is going to provide for you?
Persuasion.
+1 to persuasion?
Yes.
Yes. And I'm going to ask you, just to explain for our audience, how does that tie into Paradox?
So Paradox is having two seemingly unrelated or even conflicting things that somehow manage to work together.
All right. Okay. So persuading to take two disparate things and use them together. I will go with that. So +1 to persuading. All right. Now we get to where May was jumping ahead on us. Now you get to pick two more affinities and related boons. You've picked the one you're required to take by your calling. These can be anything. So they can you can be a chamberlain that takes an animal affinity. Anybody can take an object affinity, which we didn't go over because nobody's playing a cobbler. Object affinities don't have boons. You just get a +1 for using that object in any situation. Whatever you're doing with it, you get a +1 to using it. Mab, are you taking
I
a plus?
volunteer.
Yes. Okay.
I want to use this key.
Okay. So you're going to take an object affinity of key or keys.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I was gonna say keys because but I only have one of these.
Yeah, well, you only have one
Imagine
prop
I
key.
have-
That's fine. It can be keys. Any key that you manage to pick up and use, you will get a +1 when using a key. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. And you can also reduce damage by +1 when applicable. So you can actually block with your key and reduce damage that you might take. Okay, so that's one. You get to define one more affinity, and it can be one that you've already taken. You don't want to take keys again because you've got all the good stuff you can get out of keys. But if you had something else you wanted from the lobby, you could take lobby a second time to get a second different boon. But so what were you thinking for your final affinity?
Negotiation.
Negotiation for the lobby. So it's
Sure.
it's gonna fall under lobby, and you're gonna get a +1 negotiation.
Do you think? Can we do that?
Yeah. What are your 3 boons then? You've got keys, and you've got
Lobby, which is the networking,
uh-huh.
and then another one called negotiation. If it has to be like an esoteric concept, we can do that too. But
Nope, it does not have to be. Lobby, negotiation. That works. +1 to negotiation. That's something sure that happens in a lobby. Absolutely. So that map's done with those out of the way. May, it sounded like you wanted a second one under cat. So what were you wanting to do with that?
If I do a second one under cat, I would love to do what was it, dark vision?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
a bonus to dark vision.
Yep.
And then you said I get like technically 2 extra ones, right? So if I could do another one for object.
You could do another one for object, yep.
Hear me out. Mousetrap.
Okay. You can take mousetrap as an object. Now,
we
I
gotta
want
be
to point
like
out
this big for you.
right, when you are 4 inches tall, a mousetrap is 4 inches. So it is as tall as you are.
Okay.
But yes, you would get a +1 to any relevant test that has to do with a mousetrap. You would also be able to reduce damage from mousetraps by 1, which is not a bad thing. It's pretty specific for an object. It's pretty limited, but all of these affinities are. All of these boons are supposed to be very specific. They're not going to come into play all the time, but when they do, they're really going to help you out. So, you want to go with that? Seeing in the dark and mousetraps. All right.
Yeah, so -1. Yeah. Seeing in the dark and mousetraps. Yes.
And mousetraps. Yep. And you don't have to write any specifics on mousetraps. You get a +1 or a -1 to anything having to do with mousetraps. All right. And that leaves Brittany. You had your first one as Paradox. You need 2 more. And again, you're going to learn the runes for whatever these affinities are that you take. So you can take more esoteric ones, you could take object ones, you could take room ones, you could take animal ones, whatever you want them to be.
Okay. So sneaking about.
Sneaking about. So that's going to be a boon. What affinity can we tie that to? Animal's probably the easiest. Sorry, go ahead.
Like shadow walking or something like that.
Oh yeah, taking shadow as an affinity. Shadow. Take shadow as an affinity, and then +1 to sneaking. Absolutely. And you have 1 more that you get to define.
Let's see.
And for Escanes, since they have the rune magic that's tied to affinities, it really makes sense, at least starting out, to pick 3 different affinities, because that's going to give you 3 runes. If you tie 2 boons to 1, like you took shadow again, you only got the 1 shadow rune. So you could have a really cool boon that you want to use, but just sort of a metagaming min-maxing here. You do it the way you want to do it.
I'm going to make up one, enlightenment, where I can gather intel on things.
Enlightenment, and you get a +1 to gathering information. All right, that works. That totally works. All right, so everybody's got their affinities. They've got their boons defined. Now we are going to go and define the rest of your skill paths. And you don't have to think as hard about this. You don't have to come up with anything. All right, you have got you defined you noted one special dot, and everybody got one in skulk, because all fixers are good at sneaking and hiding. That's your survival tactic. You get 4 more dots that you can fill in among any of the skill paths, wherever you want them. As you can see on the character sheet, it is a maximum of 3 dots, so you can't add another bubble on the end and go up to 4 in anything. All right, but you have 4 points that you can assign among those how you want. And while you all are doing that, I will explain skill paths. So you got your 5 skill paths: Ponder, Skulk, Sway, Tussle, and Tinker. Ponder represents a character's skill at studying, thinking, and puzzling. If you want to figure out what's going on, find hidden solutions, or tell if somebody is lying to you, then you should use your Ponder stat. Skulk represents a character's skill at hiding or moving stealthily. If you want to sneak across the living room, hide from a predator, pick someone's pocket, or climb carefully being the key word here, up a rope, then you should use your Skulk stat. Sway, that's the third one, represents a character's skill at convincing others to do what you want them to do. If you want to tame an animal, tell a convincing lie, or befriend someone, then you should use your Sway stat. Tussle represents a character's skill at overcoming obstacles using physical prowess. If you want to skirmish with a rat, if you want to leap over a chasm, if you want to dive out of the way of a fly swatter, climb swiftly up a chair leg, then you'll be using your Tussle stat. Most anything physical is going to be Tussle. Tinker represents a character's skill at mending, making, or operating tools and objects. If you want to pick a lock, disarm a mousetrap, fire a catapult, operate a toaster, dismantle a roller skate, rewire an electrical socket, anything like that would be using your Tinker stat. Now, anything you want to do in the game, we can apply it to one of those 5 skill paths. All right, anything you decide that you want to do, and some things can conceivably fall under 2 of them. So, for instance, if you are trying to climb up the curtains, if you're trying to do it really slowly and sneakily and not get seen, that's probably Skulk. If you're just trying to get them up as fast as possible, that's a more athletic thing. That's probably Tussle. And if you've actually got a needle, like a sewing needle, and you're using it to jab in and sort of scale your way up, that would be a use of Tinker. So depending on how you describe the action and how you say your character's doing it, can change the skill path that you are using. And like I mentioned earlier, and we'll get more into it, mechanics, whenever you want to do an action that requires you to roll, you're going to look at your skill path. You're going to start with that many dice. All right, so now that I've explained it, has everybody assigned their 4 dots into their paths? All right, we'll start with Brittany, just to let everybody know what you went with on there. So if you want to run down it and tell people what you've got, that would be awesome.
Awesome. And I just want to confirm that it's 4 dots in addition to the original one that I was assigned for my character.
And +1 that should have been bubbled in on Skulk. But yes, you should have a total of 6 dots bubbled in.
Perfect. All right, so I've maxed out Ponder.
All right.
Ooh.
I have 2 on Skulk and 1 on Sway.
Okay. All right. So 3 on Ponder, 2 on Skulk, and 1 on Sway. Yes. So a very thinky sort of skein. All right. Wonderful. Mab.
I'm doing a last minute rearrangement.
Okay.
Um, so I was originally had more in ponder, but teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes, and this
Uh,
is very much a game about teamwork. So,
yeah, so I want at least one in ponder because this Chamberlain, this Chatelain is definitely a negotiator and a
yes.
people kind of person. But so I got one in ponder. Of course, I've got three in sway, and then I moved one to tinker. And because I think that's going to tie in nicely with the keys.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
Ponder, sway, and tinker for you. And then our wilder, May, what did you end up going with?
Almost forgot to unmute. So I already had one in Skulk and one in Tussle.
Mm-hmm.
So I did an extra in Ponder, which gave me one, two, an extra in Skulk, so that gave me two in Skulk, and I shall be the bronze, and I put two more in Tussle.
All right. So you maxed out tussle. Yes. So
Mhm.
you are the physical character of the group. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, so that's a nice spread there. And this is part of the reason we make characters as a group. Once we've done the group setup of the game, make characters as a group. That way you're supposed to work as a team, and teamwork is important. So that way we didn't end up with three skeins that were all ponder. You could play the game that way, and I'm sure you could have a lot of fun. It would be a different sort of game. All right. The next thing that everybody needs to do is you get to pick three objects that you are carrying with you normally when you go out on an adventure. Now, usually these are items that have been repurposed or discarded by the big folk. So you're only 4 inches tall, so you could use a button as a shield, right? I mean that's really small to us, but to an action figure, that's shield size. A sword could be a needle. You could have a bucket that's a thimble. And yes, so most of your items that you have, your adventuring gear, as it were, are gonna be other things that you are using in a way that humans don't use them. Now, that said, if you need something that's your sized, like a sewing needle, you probably carved that out of a bird bone or a quill. A hammer, that might be a pebble that's been secured really well onto a bit of a toothpick. A wrench at 4 inches tall might be a claw of a beetle. So you get to think creatively about the objects that you're carrying with you. You only get three. So Mab, you put one of your object affinities as a key. You need to write down that you have a key in your stash. You don't get
I just wrote it
anything.
down.
Yeah, you don't get
Can it be
anything.
a skeleton key?
Yes, that's that kind of key. Absolutely, it can be a skeleton key. You don't have to worry about clothing, shoes, hats, things like that. You can assume that you are wearing clothes, unless it's really important to you that you have a special sort of clothing. Um, and the reason you only get three is that carrying around a lot of stuff with you, it just weighs you down, and it has the possibility of creating a lot of noise. And part of being a Korakin is being very quiet. So you do travel light, and you do take the things that are most important to you, and out on your adventure you may have to make do. You'll find stuff. Humans are messy, they drop stuff all the time. You'll find stuff that you can use in the moment. But whenever you set out, it's well known that more than three things, and you're gonna get yourself into trouble. All right. So Mab, we'll start with you since you already wrote down key. Have you got anything else that you're taking with you when you venture out?
Thread.
Thread. Okay. Yep. taking some thread, which can absolutely. So, is this human-sized thread, which for you would be very useful as a rope? Um, okay, all right. So that's two key and thread. Anything else you're taking with you?
A pony.
No, no.
Yeah.
um,
Ah.
I will let you have a Korakuen-sized hobby horse, if you really wanted that. But a
I mean, we could
pony.
theoretically dress up like cockroach to have like little pony nose and little horse tail.
Yeah.
No, that's too far. Okay. Mm, I'll get back to you.
Yes.
I'm gonna
And
listen
so
to
that
what
is
other folks
something
have.
that is something that actually I do as a weaver, as a GM in my games. Um, you can leave anything on your character sheet blank, but the first time you use it and you fill it in, that's what it is. So
Ooh.
and stash is one of those that I always tell people, you know, if you can't think of three things, leave it blank, and then in the moment when it makes sense, like, oh, I absolutely would have been carrying a toothpick all this time. That's the third item on my stash. Great. Okay. Fill it in. Same thing on affinities. If you can only think of two, yeah, one will come to you in play. You'll need it. Great. Write it in. That's not cheating. That's part of the game, learning who your character is. All right. So who else has stuff or stash they are taking with you? Yes.
I have a random thing that's very specific. Can I have a broken needle that I have bent and it may or may not resemble a grappling hook?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And you can actually just write down grappling hook. It could also be a couple of fish hooks tied together. But I don't know about finding fish hooks in an orphanage. Like, I don't know if that's something they're giving these kids. Maybe.
In New England, I'm sure they're going fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. All right. So a grappling hook. Have you got two other things that you're carrying with you?
I had something else in mind and I blanked. I want to carry cheese.
Keys?
Cheese, as in
Cheese.
dairy, as in the food.
Cheese. Yes, a hunk of cheese. All right.
Yes.
That's yes. All right. So you've got a hunk of cheese with you. Absolutely.
That's all I got with me right now.
All right. Leave the third one blank. And Brittany, have you got any idea on things you are carrying with you?
Yes. Well, I have the book.
Okay, you've
I
got
always carry with me.
yes. Now, what is the book? Is it like a blank journal for you recording notes? Is it a book of wisdom and stories, or
It's half a book of wisdom, and I keep adding it to it.
okay, all right, sounds good.
And then I have a little mini ink well that I carry with me,
Okay,
and a letter that I plucked from someone's pillow that is my writing implement.
all right. Now I'm
So,
gonna say that you can count those as one item together, your inkwell and
okay.
pen, because while there are cases to be made that you can use them without the other, they're kind of tied together. It's kind of one thing. Um, like yeah, you could totally pour the ink on something and leave a stain, but that's not going to be the general use of it. So you can totally count the inkwell and the pen as one item, and then you have one
Sweet.
more thing you can be carrying with you if you wish.
Um, I'm going to also carry thread.
All
Thread is
right.
very practical.
Okay. So there you go. There's one last step of character creation, and that's to make sure that your character has a name. Um, so something that they can be called, whether that's their actual name or a nickname or a professional name, whatever it happens to be. But that's it. That's all there is to character creation. You pick your calling first. You pick your affinities. You define your skill paths, and you get your stuff, and then you are ready to play. Any other details, personality, stuff like that, you're welcome to think about it now. You're welcome to write it down wherever you have space. but those things often develop in play. So this isn't the sort of game where you have to write a 12-page backstory and turn it in and be graded for grammar and punctuation before you're allowed to play. None of that. That's homework. So this is just about being fun, using your imagination, thinking off the cuff. So you don't need a whole lot of details, but any details you want to add, you're more than welcome to. So we're going to go through. Does everybody have a name? I'm going to put you on the spot. Does everybody have a name for their character? Yeah. All right. So we're going to go through, and everybody can say their character's name, and if you have any other important details you want people to know about you, and then we're gonna wrap up character creation and jump into episode number 3, showing you the basic mechanics. So we'll start with Brittany. Brittany the Skane. What is your character's name?
Zane the Skane.
Zane the Skane. All right. Yes. Mab, just Mab.
It's Madra the Chamberlain.
Madra. All right. And May.
It's like mom. Momdra. Mom.
Momdra. Yes. And May.
Vera the Vixen.
Everybody went with the alliteration, or the rhyming in Brittany's case. So awesome. We've got Vera, we've got Madra, and we've got Zane. All right. Well, thank you for watching this second episode, all about making characters. Hopefully that helped. I think we probably took longer than just to talk and have fun, and that's part of playing a game. Yeah, so check out the next episode, episode 3. We're going to play a little bit of this game in the Rockland Home for Unwanted Children. I'm going to show you what you do with the cards and what you do with the buttons, and we're going to get to see these characters, these fixers, in action. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Everybody waves.
Bye.
Bye.